for here was evidence of an energy reservoir, one which found its probable source in sunlight. But what was it in sunlight that the Earth absorbed? Was it purely electrical energy, or something much more rare? Furthermore, if lightning in its vast power was simply a leakage of excess power, what sort of vast reserves lay in deeper ground strata? Tesla's new dreams began to take defined shape. His new power broadcast system required extensive and expensive experiments. These would necessarily have to be conducted at safe distances from every city. He pitched his proposals toward the New York investors once again, publicly requesting funding from J.P. Morgan. Morgan, hating both the public eye and Tesla's possible reprisals, again complied. It was a small price to pay for his own peace. But how long could he allow Tesla to achieve against his own cartels? Tesla continued to calmly play this hand until the elder Morgan's death. It was a blackmail based on Morgan's first offense. With monies obtained through Morgan and others, Tesla established himself in the Waldorf Astoria. It was a fait accompli. The entire affair was luscious, a delightful and fitting tactic for an assassination victim who actually survived. Morgan was afraid of Tesla's reprisal and kept his distance. The strangling hold which threatened his dreams of illuminating the world was seemingly broken. For a time there was luxury, a rare joke at Morgan's expense. Tesla's penthouse placed him above the world, near the stars, from which poured infinite energies. It was with these energies that he would be principally concerned for several decades. His new sky tower gave him the comfort which in recent years he felt he lacked. Tesla knew that he had to work fast. He prepared himself for the task at hand. Tesla was well aware that Morgan would send him assistants to both assess his progress and determine his own weaknesses and those of his systems. Tesla therefore refused to speak with anyone during this time period, except those press agents for whom he had special announcements. Tesla had only two effects on those who heard him. One group clung to his every statement, the others hated him. Tesla began to become secretive and mysterious concerning his new endeavors. Not one technical analyst could have imagined that Tesla was already designing geoelectric power systems. Tesla insisted that the true test of a fact is its demonstration, not the jargon of discreditors and slanderers. Above all things, Tesla said, truth beareth away the victory. Tesla planned his experiment in world engineering very carefully, often spending days of deep study in the Manhattan Public Library. Tesla worked out every feature of his proposed experimental station. It was to be a tower-like structure set on a mountain plateau, preferably based in bedrock. The Earth, he discovered, was constantly supplied with a local electrical pressure source. That source was the sun itself, whose constant electrical discharges supplied the ground with power at high voltage. This power was not in a previously usable form, arriving as a penetrating etheric gas and not as an electrical charge. Cosmic ray particles, as he first used the term, became electrical only after sufficient collisions with the atmosphere. Tesla inferred the possibility of tapping this energy source directly. Through his periodic interviews, he described what he was planning to do, announcing for the first time that his experimental station would be established in Colorado Springs. There he would apply high-voltage impulses directly to the ground, causing an uprush of geoetheric energy, as he now called it. The resultant upwelling currents would later be handled through special components whose function it was to rebroadcast the derived energy in a more usable form. Energy such as this could light the hallways of the world forever. Tesla further stated that, Should the upwelling currents reach a critical state, it might not be possible to stop the mounting reaction. He expressed fear that such a growing lightning channel would reach the ionosphere in a very short time, burning the atmosphere away in a massive expanding vortex. He warned that no one should ever attempt the experiment without careful study of the processes involved, processes which required excessive and elaborate theoretical planning. Most thought him mad. A journey from New York City to the West could not be a light undertaking. Every detail had to be pre-planned with careful discretion. He always resorted to Bryant Park here, after his extensive study periods, the large cultivated garden which lay behind the library. Here Tesla would relax with his portfolio in hand in the late afternoon sunlight. The famed Professor Dmitri Mendeleev had recently published several articles on the etheric gas, which he described in chemical terms. Utilizing his own periodic table, Mendeleev claimed the existence of a zero group, ultralight elements preceding hydrogen and having the nature of inert gases. Mendeleev proposed that the ether is actually a mixture of several pre-hydrogen gases, a rich atmosphere produced by stars and by the sun, and which filled all of interstellar space. Our own local ether source, the sun, delivered sufficient pressure to supply all our energy needs for eternity. Necessarily flooding our world, ether gas would be most easily absorbed and concentrated in the ground. Ultra-gaseous, highly permeative, and non-chemical in its nature, the electrical atmosphere filled all terrestrial matter and yet was not detectable by ordinary means. The sun, a messenger of divine revelation once again. The solar ether would magnify any applied etheric impulse. Growing in strength with time, a whisper would quickly become thunder. Impulses like the nerve works of a tremendous organism. Could he convert the planet into one immense communicating web? Innumerable connection points, like a neural network of infinite capacity. He saw the flashing impulses, speeding their messages through the ground, between stations, between cities, between nations. Here was an uncommon light above solar brightness. It was not mere superficial illumination, but something closer to the light of the mind, the light of consciousness itself. Could he transmit thoughts or visions directly through the world? Any device which employed etheric energy such as this would supply limitless power to the world forever, as long as the sun endured. Machines might become semi-conscious, responding to human willpower directly. Months passed. Tesla had already completed his experimental work in Colorado Springs. The mammoth station, whose exact purpose no one could yet ascertain, would soon be demolished by predetermined plan. That morning in 1900, courier service delivered a large package from Tesla with the bold script, "To Commodore Morgan," written across the broad label. Advisors were quickly summoned to the Morgan mansion. The enclosed note stated that, after finishing up affairs out west, Tesla would be arriving in a few days by rail. Morgan sat with intent gaze as analysts and advisors carefully examined the piles of photographs which Tesla had sent. In local press interviews, Tesla stated that he engaged geoetheric energies with astounding results, but the examiners were baffled. Beyond the sheer size of the photographed spark discharges, nothing seemed extraordinary. All they were able to assess was that Tesla had flooded the ground with current and, in keeping with known electrical laws, measured an expectable slight rise in output. Morgan went to the window and looked out, distracted. He listened, but could not inwardly rest concerning the strange man and these seemingly harmless photographs. Morgan sensed that there was a cryptic aspect, a confrontational reply which eluded all of his learned advisers. In this matter, none could help Morgan. They examined and re-examined the photographs for hours, but could find nothing really significant to cause concern. But this was his manner, Morgan exclaimed. His damned, secretive manner. Morgan knew he was being duped again by a far more piercing intellect than he had ever engaged before. Morgan burned the midnight lamp, seeking some means to obtain Tesla's exact purposes without directly confronting him. But what was his purpose? Why had he built this experimental station? Morgan believed that he had simply managed to keep Tesla occupied with trifles, while he himself was fast at work engulfing every aspect of Tesla's polyphase and polyphase systems. But now, here, not one of his science advisors could discover the truth which Tesla had found, nor the directions towards which he was headed. The arrival of Tesla was courteous and warm. The men shared whiskey and spoke of the future, while reading each other with cool panache. Tesla asked for a grant to establish his first magnifying station in Long Island. Speaking his outlandish and unscientific jargon, it seemed clear that Tesla would not pose a viable financial threat to anyone in the future. Morgan was convinced. Tesla had indeed lost his mind. And the minor expenditure of monies were all well spent in Colorado Springs after all. Distracting Tesla was profitable. Why not grant him another stipend? As far as Morgan and his staff were concerned, Tesla was off building fantasies. Tesla called the land where he built his first formal transmitting station Wardenclyffe. The simple brick housing did not require much time to complete. Transformers, dynamos, and motors arrived from Westinghouse. Furnaces, boilers, forges, lathes, cable, laboratory equipment, and office supplies were appropriately installed. Tesla literally emptied his Houston Street laboratory and moved its entire contents to Wardenclyffe Station in 1901. All his personal scientific artifacts were stored in the closets and display cases of the Wardenclyffe gallery rooms, items which included some of his original models and designs. Months were spent scouring the underground tunnels and pounding in the underground pipeworks which formed his ground connections. A central shaft of 120-foot depth was lined with a spiral staircase, surrounding the contact clutch, through which both rhythmic impulses and resultant geoetheric discharges were to be conveyed. According to Tesla, this was the most detailed and difficult part of the entire construction job. The strange-looking support tower went up last. However closely Morgan's technical spies approached and befriended Tesla, none could ever find the strange and mystifying secret of the device being built. Tesla continually modified the capacity aerial structure surmounting the tower, changing the form from an original toroid to domes of various volumes. An ovoid was constructed, whose rolled edges covered the outer perimeter. In order to prevent power loss through streamer discharges, Tesla wished to stipple these forms with tiny superficial hemispheres. Tesla actually desired the suppression of spark displays. It becomes apparent that while Tesla's applied impulses enter the ground, the resultant etheric streams move through the entire device upward and outward. Spark discharges would be a loss of power. Many analysts imagine the magnifying transmitter to be a purely electrical device. Few comprehend that Tesla applied high-voltage electrostatic impulses only to achieve flowing interactions with ground-concentrated ether. The resultant discharges were not completely electrical. He later designed a series of large vacuum globes whose function was to replace the intended metal hemispheres. The vacuum globes sustained far greater extremes of high voltage than the metal shells alone. Workers later reported the surprising inner articulate structure of the aerial capacity terminal. A spiked discharge ball was poised within a large copper sphere. This sphere was connected to the outermost capacity surface. We learned that this outer surface, covered with special single-terminal vacuum globes, served a double function of suppressing spark discharges and projecting etheric power. The whole device resembles the compound eye of an insect. The magnifying transmitter drew energy from the ground itself, pre-electric ether gas under intense pressure. One brief close of the switch and an equally quick opening brought a barrage of white fire discharges lasting for nearly half an hour. This, then, was the wonderful secret of the magnifying transmitter. Tesla had found that the strong, sudden electrical stresses of his impulse transmitters vented ground-absorbed ether in collimated jets. This geoetheric energy was ether gas under great pressure, being pushed outward from the capacity terminal with tremendous gaseous force. Etheric energy became electrical only after sufficient bombardments with matter, producing the brilliant white colorations. Tesla revealed the intended final form of his magnifying transmitter in a series of diagrams, many of the worldwide applications of this world broadcast system being conceptualized. Tesla described how trains, cars, trucks, omnibuses, planes, dirigibles, and transoceanic liners could simply absorb etheric energy through the air. The diagrams which Tesla approved reveal the atypical feature of etheric discharges, which dynamically interact with their absorptive receivers. By bending into the receivers, ether streams evidence organic qualities unlike electricity. The numerous searchlight beams are etheric power threads which connect the land-based magnifier with ether absorptive crafts. Tesla also described a protective ray whose operation against invaders is pictured. In addition, one sees the flying crafts which Tesla is said to have tested, crafts which employ etheric power to levitate. Tesla described the attractive and repulsive effects of ether beams which were projected through high vacuum discharge bulbs. Such beams have been reproduced by engineer Eric Dollard and are electrically neutral in space transit until striking material obstructions, where they become electrostatic charges. In patents devoted to radiant transmission from vacuum tubes, we glimpse the possible lifting drive which made these crafts realities. In each of these diagrams, Tesla showed how it would be possible to illuminate the night sky over the seas, the bright white light making sea travel safe. While Tesla planned to cause the air at sea to phosphoresce, ordinary illumination could be obtained through wireless globes, which Tesla holds in his celebrated series of photographs. The radiant emissions from these globes had noteworthy therapeutic effects. In addition, these lamps evidence a defined effect on human perception. Tesla observed mirage-like perceptual distortions all around his experimental station in Colorado. These effects lingered long after the system had been deactivated. These phenomena propelled Tesla into new research on the relationship between etheric energy and consciousness itself. Space-flowing etheric impulses could raise vitality, lifting heavy moods and restoring a refreshed mind state. His world broadcast system would transmit far more than usable power. Equipped with a knowledge of etheric impulses and their permeating effects on human consciousness, Tesla planned to deliberately